Okay, another edition of Riding Home. Georgia concluding its first scrimmage of spring football, and that's always an interesting time. Let's start talking about Carson Beck first. All three quarterbacks I think showed flashes, but let's start with the quarterbacks, Ryan.
Yeah, fresh out of the Kirby Smart press conference. Um, he he said the biggest thing about Carson was he said he has a really good command of the offense, right?
Right.
Now, of course, in these things, Kirby, he's not going to say too much that leads people to say, oh, well, Brock's doing the best. Oh, well, Gunner's doing the best. So Carson's doing the best. So
Right.
he said that all three guys did a lot of really good things and did some bad things. As far as Carson goes, the biggest thing is that his comfortability and his command of the offense. I think that comes with just he has a whole extra year and extra spring and all that. Well, I don't know if he has an extra spring because he came
He,
in during
he does
20,
not
but
have an extra spring.
he does
Yeah.
not have an extra spring. But an extra season, being in the system, being around some of these guys, it's everything that he said. Just kind of is just what we've been thinking. As far as Brock said, made a lot of plays with his legs.
Yeah.
Would have liked to have some throws that he threw downfield back. He did say he didn't specify who did what, but he did say there were some interceptions thrown. I don't know how many and by who, but
That's a real red flag for Kirby Smart. He's not about that world.
yeah. So he said Gunner has been working mostly with the threes.
Which is what he predicted.
Yeah,
Which is what he said would happen. I mean,
exactly.
let me
Yeah,
tell everybody where we're at in the calendar here because there are two scrimmages left for Georgia in this spring cycle. So they've got next Saturday, and of course the Saturday after that will be at G Day in Athens. Now, one quick note about G Day: it's not going to be full capacity because the side that has the press box on it, the side that has the traditional home team side, there's work being done. There's infrastructure work that's being done to add to the stadium over the next 2 years. So the water was cut off in January on that side of the stadium. So I don't know what else is happening, but at minimum, the water will not work on that side of the stadium. At least that was the case a couple of weeks ago. So that so the stadium is going to be at best half full because of construction. So they're kind of running out of time here a particular player or whoever is running out of time to make a move. But that Gunner is with the threes. I mean, that's not surprising at all. I don't think it's going to be surprising if and when he takes snaps with the twos or the ones. I mean, it's spring. This is what should happen.
yeah. I think everything that Kirby said today has been as far as the quarterbacks go, has been pretty consistent in what's been said all spring from him.
Yeah.
What was interesting, and it's just how it is because they recruited so well. But and this wasn't just dealing with receivers, but he's like, Gunner working with the threes isn't really that bad because we're so deep.
Right.
And it's something that it wasn't just the receivers, but he hit on it with the receivers a couple times. He thinks it's a really deep receiver room, just as far as guys that are really good working with threes and fours. So for Gunner, I mean, he's working with really talented people, even if he is throwing to what are considered the threes. I agree. I think it's a deep room when you add two transfers like
Well,
that.
I
You add
was just going to
a
say,
couple
yeah.
freshmen. So,
I mean,
and
rah
those two
rah.
transfers, it seems like Dominic Lovett is further ahead than Rah Rah.
I
He
agree.
said Rah Rah needs to be more consistent. That was the main thing he said about Rah Rah.
What I would add here though is that if Rara Thomas is with your threes, you're talking about someone who's been very productive um, at Mississippi State. So he's with your threes. Now, how long that will last? And I mean, when I look at the board, um, you got Marcus Rosemary Saint, Lad McConkey. That they have a group of guys that sometimes this is what's also true, Ryan, as you know, is sometimes they'll be out there with two wide receivers and Brock Bowers flexed out there as a receiver. So to say who's running with the ones, there's so many multiple sets um, that they can go with. There's just all these guys are going to play. The question is how many how many guys will play in a particular rotation. That's what to watch out for.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that's not going to be decided for a while and will change during the season. I mean, they're not afraid to rotate guys even during the
No,
season, and
yeah.
gonna they're gonna change things in October. They're gonna change things in November. It's always changing. I think I think they're in a good place with the court. I mean, it's interesting. It was one of the few times it didn't seem like he hated that he was in that press conference room. He actually was kind of chilled out, and he was disappointed with a lot of like he said for a first scrimmage it wasn't where he wanted to be at. That he thought it was a little
But he
lackadaisical for a first
okay.
scrimmage. So, but he says it every time. So
Well,
it's not.
I don't know if he says that every time. It feels like he says that
It
often.
feels like he says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And um, we're talking about a group, Ryan, that had a program that has started more quarterbacks than it has games that it's lost this decade. So, so right? I mean, so the perspective here is that they continue to be at the top of the mountain or near it, and in order to repeat that, they have to push as far and as hard as they can at all times. I don't know. I was looking at the defensive starters coming back for the 23 season. They have 7 guys that started in the national championship game that are going to return. Now, some of the guys that lost are really important players. Christopher Smith, uh, Jalen Carter, Keely Ringo, just to name a couple. But they have some really good players coming back, including the bulk of the front seven. Frankly, they lose Robert Beal, who also started, but it seems Chaz Chambliss or someone is going to take that spot. That's played a lot, but this team, he's look. If you've never been through a college practice before, I can tell you, having been through way too many of them, that every single practice is not going to be what you want, and that's not always good. Scrimmages should not be that way. Scrimmages should be go time. And I mean, my experience was college basketball. Okay, so I don't know what college football scrimmages are like. I know what it is to get after your teammate's ass, and it's a mindset, and it's a matter of, are you interested in being there that day? I do wonder with this program out loud if they've been through so many big games, so many big moments. Is a scrimmage going to really get them going? I don't know. It should get the quarterbacks going.
Yeah. Well, I think that he actually talked about that a little bit, and when he was talking about that concept that you just brought up, he was actually discussing Smile Mondon and Jamon James
Right,
Johnson.
right.
Um, he's talking about how he had to sit down with them and show them tape of the first few practices from last spring and tell them, hey, look at how much you wanted it. You guys had something to prove last spring. I don't think that you guys are fighting as hard
Right.
this time around. And they
Well, I
both
don't know. I'm
agreed.
saying right, Ryan. Like I don't know, but I think that concept is exactly correct. I mean,
Yeah, well, it is. It's true. Like this is a team, and like all these guys, like they don't know. There's literally some people on this team that have never lost as a Georgia
yes,
Bulldog. Like
yeah,
they don't know what that feels like, and I do think that there are some downfalls with that. I do think. Are they huge downfalls? Probably not. I mean, you want to know how to win, and these guys know how to win.
right.
Um, but I think it's kind of hitting some other position groups. The running back situation is just not ideal right now for them. Where you got Dejan Edwards is really limited with his hamstring.
Right.
I believe he said that it was a little unclear. Like, I don't think he went today. I don't think he like scrimmaged. Is what it sounded like. It was a
That's not
little
abnormal at all for running backs in the
no.
spring.
So I mean, they're working with, and then Andrew Paul is also not, even though
Right.
he's practicing, but I don't think Andrew Paul scrimmage. So you're working with Branson Robinson and
Right.
Roderick Robinson as your guys.
Yeah. It's just not a great situation to be in. I'm looking not at the camera, look at the board, and you just don't. I mean, last year they went with 5 scholarship running backs a season ago. And they won the national championship with 5 scholarship running backs. The season before that, if my math's right, they won the national championship with 5 scholarship running backs. So, Zamir had time where he didn't play. Same thing with certainly with James Cook here and there. But April 1st is not the day you got to get it right with your running backs, but October 1st is, and that's some time away. That's still 6 months away. And but it's just I you still want to work your guys though. I mean, you still want to work them. And right now they really can't.
No, they can't. You're dealing with pretty much just 2 scholarship running backs that can go full right now.
Right.
So,
Right.
they're switching walk-ons to play running back. It's what he talked. I didn't recognize the names. I think they're walk-ons,
I'm
guys that he's
sure.
converting to running back because of the situation they're in. Another position group that they're not well, partially because of injury, because of Marvin Jones Jr., but the outside linebackers, and this is something that is their least experienced group. I don't even know if it's close. Think about it. He was talking about older guys. These older guys were freshmen last year. That's what he's talking about. Like Chaz
Yeah.
Chambliss is your only guy in that room
That's
that has
older.
been around more than a year.
Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
Marvin Jones isn't. So you got freshmen like Impemba and Gabe Harris. Those are guys that are
Right.
they're going to be playing a lot. Like when the
In
fall
this
comes.
and in the spring they're definitely going to be. We don't know about the fall. I mean, the one thing is
Yeah.
that when Nolan was in there in the fall, they really didn't. I don't feel like they rotated Nolan out a lot that I can remember. And they certainly did not at middle or inside linebacker. So it could be that whoever the starters are outside play a lot. They do. They will. There's no. The thing about the way that Kirby and them have recruited effectively is that they have not, there's really no spot where you're like, man, they need to add some people. That's not really the case. I mean, I think quarterback is the one spot. You got 3 scholarship guys coming into the fall. That's about the fewest amount that you'd want. You can't, nobody in their right mind would enter a college football season with 2 scholarship quarterbacks. So,
That could
uh,
go wrong so fast.
well, they were in that position, I think, in 19 because they had Jake Fromm and Stetson Bennett, and one of those guys won multiple national championships.
Yeah.
It was not Jake Fromm.
Guess which one?
Yeah, it was not Jake Fromm. Hey, make sure that you're checking out DoorDash. Our friends at DoorDash, they make these ride homes possible. You can get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when using code DAWG at checkout. Limited time offer in terms apply. 50% off, $20, no minimum subtotal, $0 in delivery fees with your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store. That enter code DAWG. That's DAWG DAWG for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Do your buddies use DoorDash a fair? How much do y'all use DoorDash in World of College?
It gets used. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because you can get a lot of local stuff in Athens with DoorDash. That's the part I think
yeah.
people don't realize.
Like if I were in
Uh-oh.
Cleveland, is DoorDash, no, but like here I use it. Yeah,
Yeah, you can, and you can, and
I wouldn't say I use it like super frequently, but that's just because.
yeah, but it's there when you need
But
it,
it's
and you
there when you need it.
it's
Yeah.
there when you need it, and you can get your first order. You can get some dollar bills off. I'm excited for G Day. I know I keep saying this. I think it's going to be worth going to. I think that um, very specifically the quarterbacks are the thing that I'm going to be the most curious. Excuse me, about the interceptions. That's not good. Um, there's nothing good about interceptions. That said, guys throw interceptions in the spring. Aaron Murray was very good at that sometimes. Stetson Bennett threw some. Well, I can crack on Aaron. It happens. But are they poor throws or are they bad decisions? You'd rather have them be poor throws, I think, because decision making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, you
I
want
asked. I That's what that was. I actually asked 2 questions. Look at me in
uh,
one day.
wow.
But my first one
You're
was,
such a big J journalist, you know.
dude, my J is huge. My J is huge.
You're
Uh,
welcome, ladies. You're welcome, ladies.
So that was my first question because there was only really one quarterback question. And it went a while.
Really?
I was like, what's kind of at the top of your list of what you want to see from them on an April 1st scrimmage? And he said, demeanor, communication, decision making. And it was really funny to me because he just kind of he started ranting when he was answering my question. And at first, I was like, why is he? I was like, why is he starting to get all hyped up? And I realized he wasn't ranting at me; he was
No.
ranting at the
Yeah.
quarterback. He got a
Yeah.
little pissed off talking about their decision making. So maybe that wasn't so great today. He was talking about bonehead.
That's,
It was as if when he was speaking
but
to me that he was actually speaking to Carson Gunner and Brock. It was kind of funny.
they got frustrated with Stetson not one time when he was their quarterback. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
right.
I mean, it was not uncommon during practices that there would be a lot of frustration in terms of, hey, just take the easy open man. But it paid off at the end. This is the time, the first scrimmage of the year. This is the time to have the mistakes so they can be corrected. But you know, they're not playing in front of people really. I mean, there's probably a smattering of parents and so forth. But I mean, that's something you want to clean up. We will hear through the grapevine how it really went over time. But and that's how it goes. I mean, in the fall, I'm trying to remember, when I would last talk to folks was in in these situations where they were close scrimmages. There were times when it was said that Stetson really did play well, and there were other people that popped. But for the most part, this program is in a position where um, there's just the sum of the parts is going to be really hard to deal with for everybody else that's out there competing against the Dogs. We're not talking about the offensive line. We're talking about all the sort of negative things right now that Pop and Smile are being lectured by Kirby because they're not going hard enough or whatever. That the quarterbacks are an issue. We know where all the bodies are buried, but does Ryan is South Carolina the first legitimate game Georgia plays? Is South Carolina going to be able to exploit those problems? My suspicion, the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, my guess would be no. I just when you see just the way things get ran around here, it's hard to think that they're not going to be ready for that, especially when your first true game. That's not Is that their first SEC game? It is, right?
Yeah, I mean it's
And it
game
is their first just true,
true
test.
game.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is a test. It's a
Well, I
team.
think I think Carolina's had getting kind of your ears waxed by Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl was not ideal, but they
No,
closed really strong. The win over Tennessee, the comeback win at Clemson. I mean, the Clemson people are really still sensitive about that game. I understand it cost them they cost them a 30-point loss to Georgia in the first round of the college football playoff. But more than that, they lost to South Carolina, right? So that's what aggravates them. But Carolina had a lot of momentum now. Now Notre Dame stopped that, and can Spencer Rattler can Spencer play quarterback for 4 quarters against a Georgia defense that is not going to let you run the ball, according to Chaz Chambliss, and statistics and reality, they're not going to let you run the ball. Can he do that for 4 quarters? I don't know. I didn't think Caitlin Clark could do that. Speaking of South Carolina, to the Carolina girls, and they did, the Carolina women, and she did. So, having a team is going to be a big deal coming into Sanford. If South Carolina is one of the few teams that's actually beaten Kirby Smart in Athens, and I am skeptical that that will happen again this fall, but they had a lot of momentum, and we'll just see. But can they do that? I don't know. We're talking if everything that happened today that's negative, if Georgia doesn't have running backs, if the quarterbacks are making poor decisions, that's what happened in 19. Then maybe you can gut one out. I mean, Carolina didn't exactly run up and down the field on Georgia in 2019. They won that game in overtime, 20-17 or whatever the score was. I mean, it was a poorly played football game, generally speaking. South Carolina just stuck in there and won.
it was. Yeah, no. I, there's it's tough in the spring, man, when you're missing a lot of guys that you know are going to be key contributors. And like, I mean, where are they at? Like 5, 6 guys ish, 7, like that are out for the spring that we know,
Well,
or
that we
is it
know. I mean,
that we like?
you're
I
missing
think
too many
another
running. You're missing too many running
the running
backs.
back thing. It's just a problem. It really is. Like
You know, you would like to really have all your tight ends, and they don't. You know,
they
it's
don't, because you got Pierce Berlin's out. Here's what
right.
I will say. I think he was really positive about Oscar Delp today. But they are thinner. You know, you got in that room. They had 2 freshmen come in that are
Right.
expected to be
And they're playing
contributors.
right
One's
now.
out for the spring
Well, excuse
because
me.
he
Well,
broke his collarbone.
Lawson Lucky's in there playing. I mean, that's not an ideal position to be in. If you
No,
can
and
have it.
Lawson's their 3 at tight end.
Well, and he could be
And
their 3 this fall.
yeah,
We'll
he
see.
could.
We'll see. But what I guess what I'm trying to say is structurally, if you're having a football practice, um, because of special teams and so forth, you really would like to have all your scholarship tight ends. If you don't have all your scholarship offensive linemen, that affects like on down the line. But you can survive that. If you don't have all your DBs, you can survive that. If you don't have your tight ends, it's just like I mean, it's just some stuff. Like I also want to know who's holding. I know that probably was not asked. Who's holding on kicks? Um,
That's a good question.
because that matters. And I don't know if I know the
I
answer to
can't
that, but
remember. I'm trying to think of who the second string holder was last year. I don't think it was a quarterback.
I don't. It wasn't. I mean, it
It
wasn't
was
Carson Beck.
it might have been Thorson.
I don't know, but because
That's a
was
good question. Yeah,
was
no,
was Stetson not the holder?
Stetson was the holder.
Yeah,
It
he
wasn't
didn't.
a second string, like it wasn't a quarterback that was like the second holder. It was a special teams guy last
What's
year.
so strange about being the holder if you're the starting quarterback is like you can't really celebrate when you score because you got something immediately right after that. You
Yeah,
got the
yeah,
extra
yeah,
point, and like
yeah.
he would celebrate, but it wasn't like really going hard celebrating. And then like after you kick the extra point, it's like everybody's like, oh, are we still celebrating? So I I don't know. There's if you were to go around and look at everybody that does what we do and talk about spring practice, they would have these very similar conversations. That I think the one thing that is interesting about Georgia's position right now compared to everybody else is that if this spring game will really matter. It will be a lot of fun to watch. I guess fun, it might be the wrong word, but it will be
If you, I mean, if you don't think a Saturday in Athens watching football is fun, then I mean, we probably don't get along.
you well, you might not be really smart, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a great place to be. All right, we're gonna let Ryan get back home. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're joining our newsletter. We'll see you on the website.